thank you very much for staying with us. People who just joined, thank you for coming and joining us. So now we're going to talk about my favorite topic. It's media and how the media are reporting and how important is the role of the media when we talk about migrations, closed borders, violence, and practically war against movement, as Andrea nicely put it. We have three panelists here, plus two who will join us via Zoom. One is kind of like surprising. It's a director of the movie that we will see tonight, and she will join us also for this panel. Unfortunately, not live in Sarajevo, but I do believe that what she will tell us will contribute to the panel. So in doing this research, Goran and I tried to identify the main players of the entire situation in Bosnia when it comes to the migrations. And for us, based on the research we have done, media do play a very important role. There are many reasons for this. Unfortunately, when it comes to Bosnia, and we focused only on Bosnia, the media do not play the role that they should play. So we believe that they do not really inform the public about what is happening. And due to that reason, public is not really able to form clear and unbiased and opinion about what is happening in relations to migrations. There is a lot of hate speech in Bosnia, and what is even more problematic for me is that the media usually do not serve a public, but rather different interest group, being political parties in Bosnia, which until today are using the term illegal migrants when they talk about people who are in Bosnia, and the media are allowing them without like posing questions or challenging them on this. The second type of media in Bosnia, which is also very problematic for many years, this is not something new and we are very familiar with this after the war, are media that are financed by different donors. Over the last 4 years, since 2018, when IOM took over a big part of the state authorities in Bosnia and Herzegovina, IOM focused also on the media, and they donate quite a lot to the media, working with different media in Bosnia and Herzegovina, helping to media establishment and media, like they recently started giving money to youth organizations and started with podcast programs. It's not their mandate. Very often these media are acting in the same way like other, like local media who are promoting the voices and ideas of the local politicians and the people in power, being economic power or political power. Media whose donors are coming from IOM, but also other organizations, are in the first place promoting the ideas that these donors wants them to promote. In both of the cases, public is losing a lot. They cannot really form opinion, and I think that in Bosnia in general, people do not know enough about migrations, about the whole process of so-called managing migrations, about the role of the EU, the role of the state, responsibilities, and after all, in general, they are not aware of what is happening around them when it comes to migrations, but also to many other issues. Because the focus of this research is on Bosnia, so I hope that other guests do not mind if we start with Bosnia and with my dear colleague Elvira. Elvira is editor at the Media Center, and since 2018, I think you started following in different ways through different authors what is happening inside of the media, how the media are covering the whole situation. You are also author of the film about the hate speech and in relations to the mixed migrations in Bosnia. So it'd be very interesting to hear about this experience, what you have done, and what is the picture, according to you, of the media of mixed migrations at the moment.
Sure. Thank you, Nijara, for the introduction. And I agree with what you said about, in general, about the media and the media reporting about migrants and refugees in Bosnia and Herzegovina in the recent years. Since we agreed to prepare just a brief presentation, can I get the pointer? Thank you. But anyway, until this starts working, I can just say that, yes, I agree that media plays a really important role in informing opinions and public opinion about different topics, including the presence and the presence of migrants and refugees in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I have to say that media in Bosnia and Herzegovina reported about migrants and refugees even before 2018, and there were different examples of xenophobic and racist disinformation in Bosnia and Herzegovinian media even before 2018, but that was mostly republished from media from the region, mostly from Croatia, because these countries around us, around Bosnia and Herzegovina, they already had migrants and refugees present in their territory, and media were making a lot of mistakes and doing not just mistakes, but also deliberate negative portrayal of these people, and media in Bosnia and Herzegovina reflected mirrored that. They republished a lot of that content, and when a larger number of migrants and refugees came to Bosnia and Herzegovina in 2018, we cannot say that journalists and editors in Bosnia and Herzegovina were unprepared. They should have been aware, and I believe that they were aware of what they were doing if they were publishing different examples of hate speech or problematic content, harmful content, and disinformation. So when a larger number of migrants and refugees came to Bosnia and Herzegovina in 2018, media reporting about them also increased, obviously, because there were a lot of things happening in our country. And we have to bear in mind that institutions were unready to welcome these people who were traveling or who wanted to stay in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also you could see that that created a lot of problems in the country, and media were just mostly following what the politicians and people in the institutions were doing. They were, especially in the beginning, in the first couple of months, and we have to also remember that 2018 was, as every other year, every second year in Bosnia and Herzegovina it's an election year, so there were a lot of kind of things to bear in mind when we talk about when we want to reflect on 2018, and when we want to see and analyze how the media reacted. This was one of the articles that in the media analysis of how, if I take a look back to 2018 and recent years, this I would say that, and many other analyses said that this is one of the articles that kind of marks the start of this very negative portrayal of migrants and refugees in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This was a daily report from a couple of really smaller incidents in Sarajevo that was represented on the front page of the most widely read, circulated newspaper in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and this headline says, "Migrants are beating and robbing people." It's a story about that. There were actually some smaller incidents did happen, as you can see in the photo. That photo was taken from that day, but that wasn't such a big incident that it would end up being represented like that. And in a way, it was a start of this negative, I would call it a campaign. I don't know how much was it planned, how much was it really structured, but it looked like a campaign. But also I want to remind you that this was election year, and the issue of migrants in Bosnia and Herzegovina on that year was a political issue. It was part of a campaign of certain political parties. Or anyway, the whole issue was inevitably something that all the parties that campaigned that year they had to deal with, because a large number of people who didn't have any housing, any settlements, any proper conditions, that created a lot of problems within different cities in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This trend kind of continued even after the elections, and since the end of 2018 and throughout 2019, there were a lot of media reports that were kind of building up this narrative that migrants are a security and health threat for Bosnian and Herzegovinian citizens. And there were a lot of, here and there titles about murky affairs, about presence of drugs. And there was an emphasis on unverified information about migrants and their constant attacks and alleged constant attacks and robbings of Sarajevo citizens. And also their kind of alleged connection with illegal businesses and non-hygienic habits, which all created this very, not created, but add up to this very negative portrayal of these people in our country. And Nijara mentioned that I did a short documentary. It was kind of a analysis of media reporting on migrants and refugees done in a form of a film. And here is a short, just a short half-minute introduction of that film, so you can see some of the headlines.
Policija uhapsila je dvojicu migranata kod kojih je pronađeno naoružanje.
Prizori na ulicama Bihaća su zaista, smijem reći, zastrašujući. Slobodno ću to reći.
So this is the name of the documentary. In English, it's called Canard. You can find it on YouTube of Media Center Sarajevo. I am happy to share the link afterwards, of course. And there were a lot of examples in this short documentary, examples of these problematic headlines and articles, and even there was one article that wasn't actually portraying migrants as users of drugs or criminals, but somebody who's a bit, uncivilized, wild. And there was this story in this same newspaper that had the front story in Avaz. There was a story that migrants are eating ducks on Una River in Bihać, which was based on absolutely nothing, substantial. It was the whole story. It was on the front page, of course, because it was a sensationalist story that migrants are eating these ducks on a very nice river in Bihać, and the whole. It's very why I chose to focus on this article is that the article was based on a statement of somebody who is of some guy who the journalist obviously called on the phone and who said that he heard from somebody that they were eating ducks. There were no proof of that, and I guess the story didn't even have to have a proof. The intention of the story was to paint them as portray the migrants as somebody who is uncivilized, who would be eating ducks in the center of the city. But just to reflect on more general media reporting about migrants and refugees, what Nijara mentioned, that it's problematic that there are still some media who are using this term illegal migrants. And I believe that's mostly because institutions are actually still using this term illegal migrants, and media are not either. I don't have the answer, whether they are not aware or they're just, republishing what the institutions said. But I still believe that they should recognize a problematic language from the institutions and try to avoid it somehow or use another term. And in Media Center, we did one research. It was about, I don't want to go into this whole campaign. We can talk about it, of course, especially in 2018, how the politicians were using this whole situation to promote themselves, and media were actually not questioning what the politicians were saying or deciding. They were just following them. But that's the situation with many other segments, or fields in our society, that media are not questioning, especially politicians who have direct, sometimes even direct influence on their editorial policies. So in a research that we did in Media Center about hate narratives in the media and user-generated content, the research focused on three groups that were the most targeted from these hate narratives. And among these three groups were migrants. And the other two groups are journalists and political opponents. And in this, I just want to go briefly through these hate narratives. So the main hate narrative against migrants is that migrants and refugees are a threat to the society. And the additional narratives related to that is that migrants and refugees are a security threat, and that they are potential terrorists, and they are dangerous, and they commit crimes. And also that migrants and refugees are a health threat, and that they are spreading COVID-19, even though the majority of migrants and refugees who were at the time of COVID, they were completely isolated, mostly. Nijara would probably tell you more about that, because she's more into facts about that. And also another part of this hate narrative against migrants is that migrants and refugees are an economic threat, especially during the pandemic, and that Bosnia and Herzegovina should take care of its own citizens and their jobs, and not work to help migrants and refugees. There are a lot of things that I could say here to add up to this, but I don't want to take too much time. I feel like I've taken along already. So.
No, and we will definitely get back to you later on. But now we have a second panelist, which is Idris Musai. Is Idris with us? And I would like to call him now, because he also done research about the media in the region, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and followed, hi Idris, and followed what is happening also in some other countries in the Balkans. He spent also some time in the region. I think at the moment you are in Poland at the border, one of the borders, or you were?
No, not
sorry. Sorry, I understood
wrong. Can you hear me?
Yes. So please, if you can tell us more about this, what you find in your research, and the main points, and what you noticed, and how it is different from the reports in European media.
Yes. Hi, everyone, and thank you to welcome me here. I think I will, first of all, I'm in Switzerland at the moment. I'm working with some asylum seekers in a center, so I couldn't be present today. And actually, I will not add a lot of things after your introduction, Nijara, and the introduction of Elvira and his great work, because I conducted a short research in Bosnia and Herzegovina on the different media, and for Heinrich-Böll-Stiftung. And the goal was to understand the frame, the narrative on the media coverage concerning migration in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I chose two different media, Avaz and Nezavisne Novine. I chose them because they have a high rank of audience. So I was thinking that it was quite important to analyze them. So I wanted to analyze the different articles that they published on three different periods. So I chose 2015, where it was the beginning of the refugees crisis that we can call today as a welcome crisis. The second point was 2017, when Bosnia and Herzegovina recorded an increase of refugees passing through the territory. And 2021, in order to see globally the kind of dynamic of the narrative, if there is some changement and why and so on. And so the results were quite interesting and not super good, but it's totally in link with what Elvira mentioned just before. It's there is a lot of different points, but I can speak about 3 different ones. Is the fact that the negative narrative in which the people on the move and the migration is framed in the different publication, it's constant, and refugees are represented as a threat for the security each time. For example, one of the main topics used is crime stories. So each time there is people on the move articulate around some stories of violence, some stories of rape, some stories of robbing, always some crime things. Also, they are represented as a threat, for example, for the country, when there is some article speaking of there is some terrorist among the refugees entering in Bosnia. There is a repetition of this kind of article. And I observed also in the last period, exactly as you said, Elvira, in the period of the pandemic, suddenly there is a flexibility of the negative narrative. It's like now the refugees are the COVID spreader and are super dangerous. There is one title that was a kind of interesting. It's like a migrant escaped from a center and he was tested positive at the COVID. So there is also another point that is interesting, is that there is a constant use of number of immigration, but each time is totally decontextualized from the reality. And in the sense that you, as a reader, you're faced to a great number on the headline or in the article that you cannot compare with anything. It's only great numbers that you can only be considerate. Like there is 10,000 of migrants at the door of Bosnia, or there is 5,000 of migrants in the town of Sarajevo. It's like to create or to spread a bit some anxiety, some fears among the population. And another point, it was because I also wanted to analyze the different solutions that the publication were presenting, political solution or solution bringing by the civil society and so on. And each time we arrive to the security answer. It means that more and more when you are reading all the publication, you just read, we need to close the border, we need to erase some fences, we need to put more military at the border, we need to create a dynamic of remigration. It means to bring the refugee in their home. So yes. So these 3 points, it was quite interesting during all the period. So between 2015 and 2021, because first of all, we can observe and we can clearly see this in the documentary of Elvira, that refugees or people on the move are depicted as a threat or as an other, dangerous other. And second, there is the numbers that will stimulate the idea of invasion. So there is the dangerous other that arrive in our country, and logically there is the answer, the political answer, that is we need to close the border, we need to push them back, we need to protect us from them. And yes, basically it's what I observed and what I also could put in link with some other country that I also try to catch the frame. But I cannot speak easily about this because I didn't finish for the others. But I can put this in link with France, for example, that at the moment it's exactly the same things. It's like depicted the refugees, and under the light of today, I can say the refugees from the Middle East, because today, for example, the media coverage according to the Ukrainian refugees, it's totally different, and we are not at all in the same dynamic. For example, I can easily say refugees from Ukrainian, but it's more complicated to say refugees from some other country, as the media were constantly repeating that it's migrants, migrants, migrants. which has also an impact on on how we perceive them. And yes, I think it's all the things that I can say, but thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I just have to add something to this Idris research. It's very interesting and very good choice of the media he chose, but also it's very good picture of the situation in Bosnia. One of these two newspapers is owned by practically his PR, and he left his office after 6 months. An official explanation for him to leave the office was that he is proposing more harsh attitude towards the migrants and to find a different solution for everything that has anything to do with the migrants. The second newspaper, Nezavisne novine, is based in Banja Luka and also very, very close to political parties in that part of the country, and I'm not 100% sure that we know who are the owners at the moment and who is the back Nezavisne novine.
The family of Kopanjak. The family of Kopanjak.
Family, okay, who are very close to political parties in some way, but not like Dnevni Avaz, because this is like literally owned by the politician in Bosnia. From Bosnia and the region, I would like to kind of like move down to Turkey. I'm very happy that we have a guest who will speak more about the situation there and about the way how the media are reporting from two borders in Turkey. So Ibrahim Kibar, please.
Hello everyone. My name is Ibrahim, coming from Turkey, and I'm a member of Tarlabaşı Solidarity Group based in Istanbul. In order to not exceed the time limit of 10 minutes, I will follow some notes, so please forgive me. And Tarlabaşı Solidarity Group, and can you please open the presentation? Yep, thank you. Tarlabaşı Solidarity Group is located in the Tarlabaşı suburb, which is just several hundred meters away from the Taksim Square, which is one of the most central places of Istanbul. Disadvantaged people such as migrants, homeless people, drug addicts, transgender people cross their paths to Tarlabaşı suburb one way or another. And although there has long been going on to gentrification process throughout the Tarlabaşı neighborhood, there are still thousands of people who are currently living there. Today, I'm going to scrutinize the relation between the media coverage and the so-called border crisis happened in recent years in Turkey. And I will investigate this relation. I will investigate the relation along with two cases that we as Tarlabaşı Solidarity Group have encountered during our work in Turkey, in different places of Turkey. So before I continue, I can show you the location of the Tarlabaşı. And these are the pictures from the Tarlabaşı neighborhood. And these are some kind of activities that we are doing in the Tarlabaşı. So, before I dig into those cases, I would like to summarize shortly who are we and what we are basically doing in Turkey. So Tarlabaşı Solidarity consists of a bunch of volunteer people who have long been working in the field to establish a consistent solidarity with migrants. We are trying to cover three main areas, actually. The first area that we try to cover is that we are trying to solve everyday life's problem that regular migrants may encounter in their everyday life. So we try to solve those problems on demand. For example, the most common cases we saw in this respect are that, for example, we are getting a call from a migrant whom boss doesn't pay his salary, or getting a call from another migrant who tried to reach hospital. However, she or he has a language barrier. So we are trying to solve those problems. The second area we are trying to cover is that we have a dorm and kitchen in the Tarlabaşı neighborhood, and migrants are free to come whenever they want, and they can stay there as long as they prefer. But of course, we have a limited space, so we are trying to make a balance among people. So the last main area we cover is that we give a legal support in the context of refugee law, and we are advocating them in asylum seeking process, as well as we are advocating those who have deportation decisions from the court. These are the regular areas that we are trying to cover in Istanbul. And apart from that, we are, during the time of emergencies, we are also conducting some activities outside Istanbul. Recently, we had been in 2 different places in Turkey, and today I'm going to share with you these cases, and we'll compare them in terms of how mainstream media had covered. So the first case I will tell you will be from the west side of Turkey, while the other case will be from the east side. So in other words, in the first case, migrants are live in Turkey, and in the other case, where migrants are arriving to Turkey. So the first case I will mention is occurred just before the COVID pandemic, where Turkish government announced the west border of Turkey is no longer closed for those who want to go Greece. So suddenly flows of thousands of migrants went to the border. This case instantly turned a humanitarian crisis, considering the fact that the weather conditions during that period of time was extremely cold, and hundreds of thousands of people were spread to the more than 100 kilometers long border that we share with Greece. So these are the pictures from those times. As they try hard to cross the border, thousands of migrants had experienced very harsh pushbacks, and they have been exposed to torture, beatings, hijackings, and death, which is actually kind of very common in other Balkan borders as well. During that period of time, the media coverage in Turkey were so interesting, considering the fact that the mainstream media agencies, including the state-run agencies and the private ones, had conducted a huge amount of coverages and pretending that everything is happening as it's supposed to be. The thing was that media reported everything happened during that time was due to Greece brutality and accused European Union for the things happening. However, there were some responsibilities and the consequences had to be shared by the parties. There were 2 main consequences after all. The first thing, there was Turkey challenged European Union by allowing refugees to reach European Union in a single night. So Turkish political authority increased its political interest and discourse in the face of European Union. So on the other hand, Turkey convinced the public opinion in Turkey if refugees are not permanent, but they are transit in Turkey. So it has successfully managed by the crisis by mobilizing all state opportunities. So it ended up in a very win-win situation for the political atmosphere in Turkey, both in domestic and international area. So now with the 2 examples from media, I will clarify what I claimed. In these pictures, and these are very interesting pictures, by the way, there are, and I will show 2 more after that. I have taken from pro-government media agencies. And in the first picture, the journalist having an interview with a smuggler, and the smuggler says, "We will cross them all to Greece, by the way, by Allah's will." So in the second picture, and we do this wholeheartedly. So there were strange times for us to see those kind of interviews in the media. And also, in these pictures, the Minister of Interior, Süleyman Soylu, was being in live streaming almost every day during the crisis, and he was publishing the very exact numbers and exact data. However, it was impossible to calculate exact data. And every day he was estimating how many refugees are successfully passed the river. So what was important during that period of time was that the government also backed by the oppositional political parties and oppositional civil society as well. So oppositional political parties, they either disregarded the case or supported explicitly. So the other case I want to share today is coming from the east side of Turkey, where migrants are arriving to Turkey. So the last summer, after Taliban's taken over Afghanistan, the public opinion in Turkey started to worry about the newcomers from Afghanistan. Particularly in social media and in some news agencies, the east border of Turkey became much more visible than before. All the news and the pictures published in social media was showing that many people from east side are entering the Turkey. When news regarding the case gets more attention, the main opposition political party and all other anti-immigrant political actors exaggerated the flows and thereby securitized the migrants. And as you can see in the picture, it's the headquarters of the main opposition party of Turkey, Cumhuriyet Halk Partisi, also known as CHP. And they hung a banner with the photo of Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the head of that political party, with a photo of Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu on it. And in that manner, it says, "Border is honor." After we saw what has been going on in the east side of Turkey, we as Tarlabaşı Solidarity decided to send a reporter group to east side of Turkey. And we have interviewed some local NGOs, local authorities, smugglers, as well as some local people. And the conclusion was so surprising for us because we reported that nothing in the east side is changed than previous years. So in the end, it turned out that all the things that media covered in East had not a real base at all. So it was pretty clear for us that the media was being used for manipulating the people and public opinion. So at the same time, the anti-immigrant actors had been in the east side of Turkey and made a huge social media campaign. However, some people remained silent, the same people remained silent about the borders while immigrants left the country to Greece. So this is the last picture I want to show you today. And as you can see in the picture is taken at the very border or in the east side of Turkey, located in the east side of Turkey. And it says the same, Hudut namustur, which we can literally translate it to English is, the border is our honor. So Ümit Özdağ is visible in the picture. Ümit Özdağ is also very, who has known as for its anti-immigrant inclination. And he is also a head of a political party in Turkey. So basically, and in conclusion, the way refugee case is being covered by the media and the social media is playing a very important role in Turkey in terms of not only the tension among the society, but also political atmospheres within and beside Turkey and EU. Thank you for listening to me. Yeah.
Thank you, Rahim. I think we will come back definitely to you and from Turkey to Greece, of course, and to Via Solomon and Stavros Malikoudis. And your work, I have to be very honest now and to use this publicly, is amazing. It's really important what you do, and you're pretty unique in the way how you do and the focus what you have, and you have quite a lot of issues that you're facing on every day. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Is okay? Yes. First of all, I would like to say this was a very interesting report, and it's super interesting for us because we always get to see things from the Greek side of the border. So it was really interesting to see the Turkish perspective also. And the second note, it's really interesting to hear all the stories from the Balkans because it just reminds me what a small neighborhood we are. We don't accuse migrants of eating ducks, but we say that they eat dogs and cats. This is the Greek version. So I would like to start with two recent examples which can show the state of media regarding covering migration now. First of all, my name is Stavros Malikoudis and I'm a reporter from Solomon. The first fact comes from the beginning of this week, 28th of March. There was a report presented about media state in Greece, where there was a specific part about covering the refugee issue, as we say. This was an international report by 7 media organizations, by 7 media rights organizations, among them the International Press Institute, the European Federation of Journalists, and so. And while they talked with reporters, with editors, with publishers, with people from the journalists' unions, they asked to meet with the state authorities to address them with the findings, and they got no reply. I use this example just to say how typical and telling it is from our experience when it comes to covering migration and refugees. The authorities do not respond. They will not answer to questions sent to the ministry. They will not set up an interview. I remember in the summer, I was talking with many colleagues from big international media organizations, and they were trying to secure an interview with the minister, who didn't have time, but at the same time, he found time to be every weekend on his favorite TV show in a TV station that is reporting in his favor. At Solomon, we never get responses from the authorities. This is our internal joke. And when after 8 reports for which we sent questions, we got promises on the phone that they would answer to us and they never did. When we told them that okay, now we're going to make a pitch that you never respond to us, then they replied within half an hour and they said that we're liars or something like this. So this is the first example, just to show a bit how covering migration is in Greece. You don't have access to specific data that you can find only through state agencies, because as it was noted in many other countries here in the Balkans, data are not always trustworthy, and in some kind of data, only the state can have access to. And you very much have to rely on your own reporting. Journalists who are not going to report in favor of the governments are not going to have an interview with the minister. And when the minister, for example, is going to go on public TV or on the TV channels, then he's going to have a very welcomed floor to do as he pleases. This is the case now, but to be fair, it's not that it happened just with this government. This is an issue that is that's going on. The second example I would like to focus on has to do with accountability, which was mentioned also by many other panelists here. There is no accountability, and a great example came again this week, as we have talked here a lot about the pushbacks, and we all know what a pushback is, and we have now seen documentation of pushbacks in pretty much every available format. I think the only thing that is left for us to see now is just to be, I don't know, on the boat and get also sent back to Turkey. And this week, the Independent Authority of Transparency announced the findings on an internal investigation they did about the pushbacks, which were revealed by Lighthouse Reports and Der Spiegel and other media partners, and they announced that they didn't find any evidence of pushbacks having been committed. Something that we need to add here is that the investigation about the pushbacks, for which the Greek police is accused of conducting, was conducted by the Greek police. So it's like asking me to investigate me if I did something. It's quite possible that I will not find anything. The crazy thing about this is that this great investigation, which highlights with every possible evidence, from geolocation to testimonies, and to which reporters spent months on working, has been announced to be shortlisted for a very important European media award for the pushbacks that didn't happen. So I would say that in Greece, we have a new era, which I don't like to sound like a revolutionary, but it has came with this government. We have to remember that it's a conservative government, and that it's a government that before coming into power, very much accused the previous government of letting everybody come in the country and not taking care of things and giving power to the NGOs, to the corrupted NGOs, and all of this. For me, the most telling example, I wish I had prepared the PowerPoint, but I didn't, is we made a collection at Solomon. We gathered all the quotes from government officials when they referred to refugees or to asylum seekers, as you said, as illegal migrants or as migrants. The context here is that in Greece, which has been exhausted by seeing populations on the move pass, what we have left is that to people who can be considered asylum seekers or refugees, maybe we have some human rights towards them, but when it comes to economic migrants, then we don't have any human rights towards them. This is the attitude of the state and of the authorities. So what happened is that this government already before coming into power, they completely changed the narrative and they started talking of people which data said that they were refugees because they came from countries where dominantly they would get international protection. They started referring to them as migrants, as economic migrants, to be more precise. This changed the whole narrative, and to come to my sector, the media followed. So you had media which would refer to them, I don't know, 1 month before as asylum seekers or refugees, and from the next month, you could see progressively how it was changing. And now, of course, we are referring to economic migrants. It's very rare to refer to refugees anymore. Although if we look again at the official data, it's still, the people who arrive in Greece are mostly from countries to which international protection will be given to big levels. So this is a bit what the government managed to do. And then we come to the problems of the sector itself. When we had the big issues, the bigger numbers, let's say with the refugees arriving to Greece, it's very telling the fact that the biggest and the most important reporting was done by international media. So it was not done from Greek media. It would maybe be done by Greek colleagues. One of them is here today. But it would be for international media, and this has some simple explanations. The one is that most media don't even have money to send the reporters on the islands. They wouldn't give them the time to work on it. Maybe they don't find it important. But for me, it was very weird because I was also much younger then to realize how all the important reporting is being done by people, by media which are not Greek. This is just on how things are in the condition. And now we have reached to a point where we have what was mentioned also before in the previous panel, all this criminalization of solidarity, of people working with refugees, of the NGOs, and to our sector of one thing of discreditation of reporters. So you would have reporters working on months on an investigation, and because we know them, we know how committed they are to truth and how they do the reporting, and then you would have the government dismissing months of reporting as Turkish propaganda. Turkish propaganda, to come back to also to your presentation, is something we have to keep in mind very much when we report on refugees in Greece. Greece is, first of all, an orthodox country, dominantly. When we see people who come from Muslim countries or mainly Muslim, immediately there's an association with Turkey. There's this narrative that if something happens, these people will fight with Turkey against us. We don't know what will happen or how, but this thing is very widespread. And of course, all this information that is a thing also in the Balkans, that they cannot integrate, that they come in much bigger numbers than they really are, that Greece cannot hold any more refugees, they don't want to integrate. It's mostly male asylum seekers who, this is also something mentioned, who are also in the age of war. These are all narratives which are not only spread by some far right and some fringe blogspots, but they are very present in the mainstream media as well. And I would close with the fact that, as I said, it's not easy for us or for international media who want to address the government and set questions to them. It's not very easy to arrange an interview. When the ministers and when the authorities, they go to, let's say, friendly media, they face an entirely friendly environment where they don't get asked about anything. So in the recent weeks, when we have the people from Ukraine who have to leave their countries, we had some statements by the Minister of Migration who talked about real refugees and not real refugees. He said that these are the real refugees, Ukrainians, and implied that the people who arrived to Greece from Syria or Afghanistan, they are not real refugees. Of course, this has nothing to do with international law, and it was such a paradox argument made by the Minister of Migration that the UNHCR, which we know that it's a much more calm, let's say, organization, and they are very careful how they express and what they do in public statements. They answered to us in a detailed statement, calling what the minister said actually like nonsense, and that it has nothing to do with international law. So I mean, it was such an exaggerated statement that the UNHCR got away of the most usual position of keeping things calm, and had to address it. And of course, besides the fact that you will not get answers to questions you make if you are not friendly to the government, we have had many incidents of prosecutions of journalists, of arrests of journalists. They are a thing now, they happen more and more, especially on the islands. And these are being documented by the international community, by the media organizations, by the media watchdogs, and they cannot be addressed publicly because they get into this context of national security and Erdogan's propaganda, and you are representing what Erdogan wants. And this immediately makes the whole argument tiny. It doesn't give it space. This is a typical description.
Very similar to other countries in the Balkans. We have also Elfie with us. She's the author of the film that we will see tonight, documentary Shadow Game. And while working on this film for a couple of years, you more or less visited all of these countries, definitely Bosnia and Greece. And as I can remember, access to information and the places was also an issue at certain times for you. So it'll be great to hear from you also how difficult and how different it was working for you as an international person in doing a documentary than it is for us locals. And it would be good also if you can tell us a little bit about how, if there is a difference in the media in the Netherlands from this what you heard about the Balkans.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you for having me, and it was really interesting to hear my colleagues' stories. Actually, very recognizable. Unfortunately, about the portrayal of refugees, migrants in the cover in the mainstream media. I think in the Netherlands, actually, to start with that, it's quite similar. I see that xenophobia has these cultural differences. It's either eating ducks or dogs and cats. Well, in the Netherlands, we see that in mainstream media, there's a lot of water metaphors. You know, the Netherlands is below sea level, so the water is the main threat to us in the Netherlands. So in the mainstream media, we see a lot of terms like a flood of migrants coming, a flood of people. So it's very interesting that actually it's the same, but then different interpretation or different terms. So for Shadow Game, me and my co-director Els van Driel, we were working for about 3.5 years, 4 years in the different countries along the Balkan route. And I think actually, to start with, I think it would be really difficult to make that film now. I think the violence has gotten worse, the criminalization of NGOs, of people trying to help refugees, people on the move, has gotten worse. But I think also for journalists to do their work, it's really getting worse. It's really difficult. Having said that, we were able to still do our work. We were able to get access to the camps. We did get to the borders, although we did also get into a lot of trouble with border guards sometimes. But what really struck me was that I felt really privileged, actually. If I were harassed by a border guard or by police, I would show my international press card and I would show my Dutch passport. And usually, actually, they would back off and they would even apologize. And we even had a case that we were, of course, working often with our Greek colleagues, or in Greece, we were working with an amazing Greek journalist, but in Hungary, on the Hungarian-Serbian border, we were working together with a Hungarian journalist, and we could see the difference. I mean, the way they were treated by the local authorities was really harsh. Whereas we were, well, as I said, privileged that we could get away with filming there and being there. So for me, it was really shocking, actually, that difference. And I guess also it showed to me that besides the amazing work that my colleagues in Greece, in Turkey, and all over the Balkans are doing, I think we also have to be there, and also to tell the stories in our own countries, and maybe also to make uses of this horrible privilege that we have. And so one of the things that is difficult, or was difficult for us, was really to get this story of what is happening on the Balkan into the Dutch media. I mean, I think the first time we were filming in Bosnia-Herzegovina and we met each other in Nitzara was 3.5 years ago. And of course, we were really shocked by what we encountered. The amount of violence already happening back then, it only got worse. And I think one of the first things we did was we called our colleagues at news channels, and we said, well, we're working on a documentary, but that takes time. But please go to Bihać, please go to Velika Kladuša, go and report, because what is happening, it's not normal, it's absurd. And basically what we heard was, well, it's not that bad yet, it's not in the media yet. So what we see in the Netherlands is really that, and I think one of my colleagues mentioned that, there's not a lot of money anymore in journalism to send correspondents to the places where things are happening. So maybe, individual colleagues, of course they wanted to go, of course they want to report, but they go to their chief and they will say, well, there's no money, it's not in the media yet, so we'll cover it later. So instead of putting it on the agenda, they follow the agenda. So that was really difficult, actually, to see. I think over the last year, we've seen finally that there is a lot of attention for pushbacks. Also, especially since what's happening on the Polish-Belarusian border. But now, of course, with the war in Ukraine, we see that people that are stuck on borders, the illegal and violent pushbacks, they are not in the media anymore. So again, we have to, try to put that back on the agenda as well. So it's it's a tough battle here as well, I think, to try to get that in the media, and also to change the narrative. That's something we try to do with Shadow Game, our documentary. I hope you can all see it tonight. Also in the Dutch media, and I think it's something that's happening all over Europe, is that especially young men and young boys are depicted in the harshest possible ways. So they are not just migrants, but especially in the Netherlands, they are called illegal migrants. They are called criminals, rapists. So they are really the group that is targeted in the harshest way, which was also one of the reasons that we wanted to make this film. It's a film completely from the perspective of children, of teenagers, and especially from these boys, because they are one of the biggest groups of children, or the biggest group of unaccompanied minors. So yeah, we really try to find a new narrative to show what is happening to them when they are trying to find protection in Europe. So that was for now. I don't know if you have another question.
Tonight we will have much more questions, but stay with us and maybe somebody from the audience, because we have less than half an hour. This panel is a little bit shorter than the others. So please, if anybody from the audience have some questions, or if we have already questions on Zoom, I will open the panel. But before we get any questions, I just want to go back to something that you, Stavros, talked about, but Elvira didn't have a time. But I mean, it's really big issue for us journalists here in Bosnia that we do not have access. We do not have access to information. And if you can just tell a little bit, we had a couple of so far incidents where journalists were prevented in a very, very harsh way, to put it in that way, from reporting about migrations. It seems to be, it is a huge issue for many media in Bosnia, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they are not really reporting maybe about the whole issue.
Perhaps it is. I have to say that the access to information about certain topics that are related to the work of institutions in different fields is problematic usually, because institutions tend to be very closed. We have the Freedom of Information Act, and in general there is freedom of access to information, but in daily work of journalists, there is a lack of real flow of information. When journalists ask the institutions about important statistics or important statements, or if they ask them to comment on something, to explain something, or just to give them information that the public needs to know, a lot of institutions are actually closed. And there were actually incidents with journalists who were prevented to film, to have access near the migrant camps, and some journalists also have told us that they were even threatened by the police and that they were mistreated, and probably you have the same examples in Greece, maybe a lot more examples, and in Turkey as well. So yes, that's maybe part of the reason why journalists are not reporting that much. But I wouldn't just blame the journalists. I would also, not blame, but put some kind of burden on the editors, because they're the ones who should be kind of making the way for their journalists to do these stories. And also another problem is that especially in kind of pressured are the freelance journalists who don't have this a newsroom behind them, or even some kind of journalistic community who would kind of protect them, or at least stand out if some incidents happen. So there are layers of problems. And what you mentioned that newsrooms are not, then they don't have enough money to send journalists to different islands. I would say that here some newsrooms don't, especially the mainstream media, they don't have not just enough resources, but I would say not enough interest or will to send journalists in the field. It doesn't have to be some distant island or anywhere too far away. It's just that they are kind of they are satisfied with just a few comments from politicians. They don't prefer to, or they don't insist on field work, but that's, I would say, Nijara, you would probably agree with me, that's in different other topics, not just the migrants and refugees. But this topic, I believe, migrants and refugees and the conditions they live here, they live in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that needs to be field work from journalists and the newsrooms.
How it is in Greece? It's access to the camps is, and I don't know, in Turkey. Like, do journalists have access to camps?
Before we had before the camps around them, they used to have like other shacks, like tents of tents, and so, because they were overcrowded. So basically, it would be that probably you wouldn't get permission, but you could still go and you were pretty much okay. For example, in Moria, I never got an official permission, but you could just go and you could sneak in if you were a bit careful. The thing is that now there are new camps that have been created both in the mainland. In the mainland, they have restructured the old ones, and in the islands, they make new ones, which are they are really different. So there's lots of surveillance. There are cameras. You have to go in through these doors that you have to, to put a card and then your fingerprint and something like this. And you can ask for permission to enter, but this is not. You will not see the real aspects of the camp. So, for example, there are some media tours that are being organized by the ministry, and let's say they are going to take place on Sunday, and then we have people from the communities from the camp which send us the whole week videos and photos of how they are cleaning around, they are making everything nice, and so when you go there on Sunday, you will not see real life. You will see just a tour that doesn't satisfy public information, but satisfies the person who organized the tour. And it has also been noted from us also, but also from colleagues, that you would go to the camp and then someone from the ministry would be there and they would tell you, don't talk to the refugees. And you would be like, okay, but why am I here then if I cannot talk to the refugees? So who should I talk to? Or they will tell you, like, delete this photo, don't go there, you have to follow a specific path. I think this doesn't really serve the information. And at Solomon, at least, we prefer to not do it. Like as an older and much more experienced photojournalist told me once, we will find our way and we will go some other time when it should be, when it will be how it should be.
It's like, I mean, something that you said before, I mean, even here in Bosnia, like colleagues who are coming from any international media, they have much easier access to anything, anything they want than us. I mean, we are just like not considered relevant in some situations, and we are bombed at the same time, and I'm not sure, like, is it the same in your countries, by PR? So everything is PR. Like yesterday, it was absurd for me that IOM on their social networks call everybody to follow social networks of the Ministry of Security in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So it's just absurd. So in that situation, they're kind of like taking away the even opportunity to ask the questions, and actually they don't want to give any answers. So it's really problematic here in Bosnia, unlike, but then in some cases, even international journalists were forbidden from entering, but it's mostly locals. How do you know anything about the situation?
Actually, the situation in Turkey, almost the same with the Greece, but however there is one important difference, I guess, and that difference is that the stories are in Turkey in the streets right now. So the camps are actually not as important as it was before. So in the beginning of the so-called crisis. So right now, as there are millions of them, millions of the newcomers, they are one way or another have to find a job to make their living. So, but with respect to camps, the journalist, of course, has to get permission before they enter. And most of the case, not most of the case, in all case probably, the state-run or the pro-government journalists will be able to get the permission before they enter. Yeah.
I would just like to add something that when we are talking about media reporting and the thing you mentioned about Ministry of Security. Earlier, you mentioned the former Minister of Security, who is the actual owner of this newspaper. And why am I going back to him? Because he had some of the really problematic statements. Again, this is a security minister at the time, and he's saying literally that migrants should be expelled from this country and returned to their countries of origin. And in general, I would say that the majority of media don't have this kind of critical stance towards whatever the politicians are saying. They're not, the mindset about this whole topic is not to be primarily critical, to say, I didn't hear any or see anyone asking, how do you mean expel? How can you expel somebody who's here? Can you define expelled? I mean, so and also there were different situations, not just with this minister, but the minister after him, when he was saying that there is 50,000 people, 50,000 migrants at the border marching towards us. And media are just republishing these statements, and nobody is kind of not to say fact checking, but kind of checking. I mean, 50,000 people in one place is a pretty big thing. So, but in the media, in the mainstream media, especially, you see these kind of claims which are not true, just being republished. And I also have one more example. You would remember, Nijara, that there were a lot of media reporting about how now with the big number of migrants and refugees, the level of criminality rose in Unasana canton. And actually, there's a team of journalists, Björn, they actually checked the numbers, and it didn't. The criminality didn't rose at all at the time. And also they took numbers to see what percentage of that was actually the migrants who did some robberies or whatever. And the percentage was really just a small percentage, a lot smaller than the local population. So there are some media, not just Björn, there are a lot more, of course, but my main feeling here today when we are talking about media coverage of this topic is that the majority of media are just republishing what the politicians are saying or copy-pasting from each other, and there is always a minority, I guess, in Greece and Turkey as well, that is trying to, but I'm not sure how you are or we are reaching the wide audiences and changing the opinions?
I think we can open. We already have. I see some hands. Can we just have a microphone here in the front, please? So should we take both questions and then answer? Okay, thanks. So we have here and here, yeah. And
thank you very much, all of you, for the excellent presentation, especially you, Stavros, for the nice, kind words. I would just like to recall something that our French panelist said at some point about putting numbers into perspective. So, for example, in Greece, you had 9,000 arrivals last year, right? This is a country that receives like 30 million tourists every year. The tiny island of Mykonos or Santorini, which are like I don't know, whatever, like holes, they get 1 or 2 million people, and they can actually accommodate them and provide them with basic necessities, right? So I think for years we have been listening about this huge wave and huge problem, and people, I don't know, going out, filling out squares and whatever. When the numbers simply don't add up, you know, especially now. So this is very, very important, just to put like the things into perspective. Yeah, that's number one. I think I would like to ask our Turkish panelists here is, I'm just curious, I've been in Turkey a couple of times lately. What I've seen is that it's actually the opposition parties who are more anti-migrant than the Erdogan government, and which was kind of weird for me to witness. And I was just wondering, how does the media cover migration in Turkey? Is it like, as they do in Greece, like the enemy, or like a weapon that Turkey uses? How is the coverage? Like, what's the tone? What's the
Actually, it's a very good question, and I was expecting the question. Because in Turkey, there's a very strange story to tell. As you said, the opposition coalition is a way more anti-immigrant than the Erdogan's coalition. So even though Erdogan is a right-wing, leading a right-wing party, so how media cover the refugee is actually it's almost 10 years ago when all the Syrian war broke out, and as my friend here told us, they are Muslims, so there's a kind of a different story to tell in Turkey, considering the fact that most of us shares the same religion and the kind of same culture. So it really differs from one agencies to another, but as the time passes, the refugees became much more enemy than before. So things are getting better and better day by day, unfortunately. And it's very visible in the media as well. So I'm kind of hopeless for the future in terms of everything, particularly in the media. And last thing I can say about this is, maybe you know, the next year we will have an election. So it will be. I mean, the refugees will be the main concern with respect to all election process. So the media will be used much more than before in the years to come. So I'm not sure if it's okay for you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So thank you also from my side for these fascinating insights. And again, we see the similarities. It's just mind-blowing, to be honest. I've heard throughout the panel, I felt like there were two, looking at the question why we see these kind of mainstream reporting, we see two potential patterns or two potential sources. One is the political, the politicization maybe of the topic, political affiliations of certain papers, things related to this field. And then one thing that was mentioned a couple of times was also the question of resources, the independence of media outlets in terms of having the means and the resources to do their job properly, so to say. So I'm trying to find a way, like trying to have an outlook on where could one potentially try and improve things. These are two different areas, maybe, because if it's about resources that hinder media freedom, because you know, what probably the pandemic also didn't help, then this is something that could be probably tackled in a different way than political influences and interdependency. So I would be really curious to hear from basically all panelists on what you think.
Okay, can we take like 2 more questions and then 3 and then
Thank you for this impressive talk and information to sharing with us. And Stavros, welcome to Bosnia after Belgrade. It is so nice to see you here. And so my question is Elvira, since she's from Bosnia. And also from point of the academia, I want to share with you, we are having the difficulties and challenge to reach out this information, statistic and data and numbers. But what I am going to ask you, how often do you engage with local academics to kind of to collaborate with them, to conduct some kind of research and to publish in the journalist point of view, and academics can do their point of them to the research? And have you ever engaged with any kind of local academicians in this purpose?
Thanks for the intervention. It's very interesting also to see the differences between the EU media space and the non-EU, which doesn't mean necessarily European. And on this point, I was just reflecting while you were talking. We have seen how migration is a target. So people who provide material help are also a target. We have seen it before. People who write about that are a target. And definitely there is the question of how to build up a counter argument, counter narrative, counter hegemonic discourse, and so on. And especially in this dialectic, the European Union space, media and political space, and Bosnia, Turkey, the non-EU space, media space. So in this dialectic, how can we build a different narrative? According to what I've seen in the last year, several media have been trying to use, the rhetoric of indignation and saying, well, this is not supposed to happen in the EU because we have human rights, the rule of law, and blah, blah, blah. We have a state, so this is illegal. We cannot accept that. This has been used a lot. But can we go beyond this discourse, considering that this discourse actually empower, especially like populism, far right, xenophobic discourse, and so on?
And Caroline.
Thank you very much. I have worked on the project that is exhibited outside called 1000 Dreams as a photographer. And for this project, all the photographers were refugees, asylum seekers, or former refugees. So I'm a former refugee myself. And I just had a question regarding refugees and the media. Have you heard of examples of refugees taking this media power with themselves, like initiatives where refugees film themselves or speak about their experience? I know it's very hard due to the diversity of languages and stuff to have people brought together, but that was my question. So thank you.
And in your back, one more, and then we will
Yeah, thank you very much. I wanted to ask if you can comment on how these national media portrayals of what's happening are used but also abused by international media. What I mean by that, for example, in the summer, in August, I was in Van, in eastern Turkey, and what happened there was that the local journalists released a video of a convoy of people crossing the border without any clear identification that these were refugees, but he portrayed that these were Afghan refugees, and immediately everyone snatched upon that. What happened afterwards was that during the next few weeks when I was in Van, there was a huge influx of Western international journalists who were catching up the stories and reproducing this narrative. And another thing was that I was even contacted by the EU delegation in Turkey and the Czech Minister of Interior, all freaking out. There is a new Afghan crisis just upon this one release on Twitter. It was not even in media. So, because you mentioned about, domestic portrayal of different situations, but can you comment upon what can be the negative abuse of or use by international media following these misinformation and domestically produced narratives?
Thank you. And I mean, whoever feel, and also like, please, Idris, and if you feel, if you want to add something, please just let us know, and we will call you on Zoom. So yeah, who wants to go first?
This first question was to him. So this first question about dependence of media to political parties and the lack of resources, I have to say for Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's directly connected, because this is a very, very small media market, and a big part of media financing actually comes either directly from the institutions that are run by members of political parties, or or some part of this media market are obviously private companies, but all the big advertisers are actually somehow related again to political parties. I'm sorry to not have a clear answer or a good idea about how to deal with this, but I believe that some media who do have resources that come from different sources outside of the country, or big media houses, that we have a couple of media houses here present in Bosnia and Herzegovina that have resources from somewhere else, like regional media, and I believe that their reporting could somehow kind of raise the bar of expectations by the public. And another question was, for me, was whether we are partnering. You mean we as media center in our media analysis? Actually, we are not. We didn't have any research projects that we partnered with local academics, but it's a good idea to start. So I'll be happy to find you after the panel and discuss this.
Yes. I will be honest, I liked all the questions very much, so I will try to answer to all of them very quickly. On refugees working on media, this is actually how Solomon started, like the media represent here, and still some of the core members are refugees themselves. There are initiatives in Greece, but as you said, sometimes the language barrier, this we have seen that it leads that they can better work as photographers or video, and this works a lot. In Greece, there is also one organization called Refocus Media Lab, and they worked a lot in Moria, especially in the old, in the huge camp. And what they did was that they trained refugees. They basically gave them the equipment, and they could shoot on their own photo, video, and they collaborated also with big international media like the BBC. They made some documentaries. They are really nice, and now they are expanding to Athens. And there are more organizations in Europe. There is Cojero in Germany, Giti in France, and Bainana in Spain. These are all media organizations with both, let's say, local residents and refugees, and they are doing really nice work. And I think there are more, but I don't know them. And there's also Global Girl Media, which is it's only girls, women, and they make video, they make documentaries. They are based also in Athens. To what Yorgos says, to put the numbers in perspective, I would like to say First of all, I totally agree. And for example, Greece has now accepted, if I'm not mistaken, a bit over 15,000 Ukrainian refugees in like, I don't know, 2 weeks. But of course, this is not a problem, and there's no refugee crisis. And I think that even if 50 more thousand or 100 more thousand come, there will be no crisis. And exactly what he said, when we have 30 million tourists, there's also no crisis. And to get also to the vocabulary, there's also no wave or influx. So when we have 30 million people coming and several million from the Balkans coming south, this is not an influx, but when you have some, I don't know, tens or dozens or hundreds of people coming from Turkey, this is a wave somehow. So I think we also need to change the narrative by also using the correct words, by being careful what words we use. To the question of if it has to do with resources or with political influence, in the case of Greece, I mean, since you asked, I have been thinking about it a lot, and 1 second I say the one thing, 1 second the other. I think in Greece we have to keep in mind that state media is always in favor of the government. In Greece, this comes to an extent that, for example, the news agency, which is the state news agency, which is the only news agency in Athens, the big one, will go to the point that when Washington Post made 25 questions to the Prime Minister, and 5 of them were negative for him, they published 20 questions from Washington Post. Like they will raise the others as if they never existed. The big change here is that I think, I don't know if older colleagues would agree, but now I think it's the first time that you have both the state media and all the big private TV channels somehow in favor of the government. I think this is a shift. But I also have to say that I think that when I only put the blame to resources, this is also not descriptive of the condition. I think in some part it has to do with maybe there's not knowledge, maybe there's no interest, as you said, to better covering the stories. I think we cannot only attribute it to resources. So I think we have to also to see a bit the problems of our sector besides the economical hardships. And to the question of the international media and how they come to an area and how maybe they impose the narrative they want, I have to say that, like in Turkey, this is a huge problem in Greece. We often get contacted at Solomon from colleagues, usually from Northern Europe, who want to come to Greece with an idea that they have already in their mind. And when they come to Athens and we meet, maybe we explain to them that this is not as they thought. Some people came to me one day and they asked me to find homeless refugees in a specific area. I told them, this is not an issue anymore, it has stopped. And then they were saying, no, you should find some. I told my editor. Like this thing, it's crazy. The unfortunate event here is that these jobs usually they pay much better than local wages would be. So lots of colleagues are forced to do it. And then we will talk in the evening and they will complain and we will complain. But it's very often that they come, I guess in every country, they come with an idea they have in their mind already before having visited Greece. Maybe they haven't been to Greece before, but they have an idea somehow, somebody told them, this is sadness porn or, misery porn. And they think that they have to go back with this story. It doesn't matter if it's not descriptive of the conditions, if it's not accurate, they think they have to go back with this.
So I will start with the answer your question. Actually, I'm not a media producer, but rather I'm a consumer, and I work as a lawyer in Turkey. So, and my master's was about international human rights law. So, with respect to narratives that media agencies can provide, I think in the context of Turkey, correcting the very basic faults could be helpful. Why I'm saying this because is that in the Turkish refugee law, it's somehow more complex than the regular European Union refugee law, because we have at least 5 different status that Turkish authorities offer the migrants. And it is because the refugee convention signed by Turkey is a little bit different than the other countries. So only the migrants who flee from the Council of Europe countries will be able to get real refugee status in Turkey. So, as I said, there are 5 different categories in Turkey at least. So in the main media, it could be helpful for everyone in Turkey is to correcting the basic faults, because people in Turkey often doesn't know what law says, or maybe we can go for the very basic norms of human rights and very basic standards we have in domestic law. So that's why I mean, at least in my experiences, these kind of strategy agenda had been helpful for me. So with respect to international media question, again, I can just share one interesting experience of mine. So during that period of time that I mentioned in my presentation, so we as a Talaba Solidarity spent 4 weeks in the border of Greece. So during that period of time, and we were of course sharing some photographs and pictures on social media, and the international media just going crazy for us. I mean, they DM us lots of time, and they are just trying to buy our pictures, and they are offering up to 500 euros to get the videos. And they were, I mean, I didn't sell, but a friend of mine was sending the location to the journalist who based in New York or elsewhere, I don't know. So they can thanks to the technology, they can get the material, but how they create the narrative is just up to them. So this kind of technological achievements could be somehow problematic at the same time. Yep, basically.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody. Even though it's already 5 past, we have a special request, a bit surprised by Teresa Albano from OSCE. So I will just ask you if you please give us a comment, or if you want to say, but just if you can be just brief, because we have to finish. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. I will be very brief, and I really wish to thank you for the opportunity to address you and speak very briefly about the project that we are implementing regarding the narrative of migration. So this project started in June last year, and it's exactly a research project in order to better understand which factors can really influence the attitudes of people towards migrants. The project covers Italy, Austria, Germany, Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and North Macedonia, and we work together with universities and production companies a bit outside of the usual migration environment. So we are now going to publish a stock-taking report. We have analyzed information campaigns carried out in the past. We do not analyze primarily how media convey the message about migration, but because today communication is also very much spread in social media, and journalism is no longer the let's say the only attribution of public media or state media, we want to better understand how we can shape a message that can resonate with audiences that are not already positive towards migrants. So in overall, this project is a research and development project by which we want to learn to increase our knowledge on how we can shape effective messages. And then we want to test these messages through prototypes that we are going to test on audiences in the 6 countries. It's a very unique project because, as you were discussing today, there is not much research about how people shift their opinions about migrants and migration, and particularly in middle-income countries, such as in the Western Balkans. So it will be an incredibly interesting adventure, and it already is, because we are also engaging many different disciplines, from semiotics, movie directors, experts on behavioral marketing, and sociologists of migration. So we are trying to look at the narrative of migration from different perspectives in order to give back to both civil society, governments, and the European Commission, which is the main donor of this initiative, guidelines on how to shape effective communication messages about migration in the future. We will be soon in the region for a tour to present the stock-taking report. So I hope that we can collaborate with the Heinrich-Böll-Stiftung in also engaging you who were participating in the conference, in this conference today. I will be very happy to meet you all in Sarajevo, Belgrade, and Skopje. It will be my care to share the calendar of the workshops that we are going to organize with the national creative groups. So this is my 2 cents for today's discussion. I hope this can also offer a source of inspiration for future discussions on this topic.
Thank you. It would be nice if some of us have a chance to speak with the European Commission. We have quite a lot of questions for them, and I'm not sure they have the answers, or they will give us the answers definitely about the freedom of the speech, freedom of movement, and concentration camps they are building around Europe. So that can be an interesting part of this project maybe. However, we have to finish now. Tonight at 7 o'clock at Meeting Point in Sarajevo are 2 amazing films. I really invite you to come to be with us. Those who are following this from Sarajevo online, it's free, it's open for everybody. Come, you really don't want to miss these films. One film is by 2 Bosnian authors, by Damir Šagolj and Danis Tanović. When we were them, they spent some time in Krajina region, close to the border with the EU, filming what is happening there. And the film is it's a short documentary. It's amazing. And the other one is by Elfie, and she will be there tonight with us, together with Sajid Khan, that I'm very happy that he will be at least over Zoom with us in Sarajevo. He is one of the boys who crossed the Balkan route and now is in Holland, and he's doing in Belgium, sorry, and he's doing well, and it will be great to see him after we met in different locations all over the Balkans. And after the films, we will have discussion with the author. So I hope I will see you tonight, and thank you very much for this. Thank you.